So, Will, tell us a little bit about Tony, the Tony Blair Rock Opera.
Oh gosh, well, I suppose to give it a nice pithy description, it's a roller coaster ride through the highs and lows of Britain's most successful Labour Prime Minister. Yeah, there you go.
Oh, wow, a roller coaster.
Yeah, well, I think most people that come to see it will be familiar with the various key points during Blair's lengthy premiership, but we take the audience right back to the start, the very beginning of Tony's life. And then, yeah, I guess Act One is his sort of his rise and his ascent to sort of great popularity before things take a slightly darker turn, inevitably, because there is some stuff to deal with. But it's pretty anarchic. It's a lot of fun, as you might expect from a Harry Hill script. Um, Lots of wigs, lots of characters that you will know and possibly love. A lot of accents, a lot of multi-rolling. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I hope people will enjoy it.
Well, speaking of multi-roles, can you tell us a little bit about the role, or maybe I should pluralize that, the roles that you play in the show?
Well, we all play a sort of, I suppose, a bit like a Greek chorus. We all have there is a sort of an ensemble who will, crop up at various points to kind of narrate various stages in the story. Um, so I'm in those. I also play Bill Clinton. Mick Jagger makes an appearance, and then I also, I suppose, my most important responsibility is understudying pretty much everyone. Tony Blair, Gordon Brown, Peter Mandelson, John Prescott. So I've got I've got a lot of different characters whizzing around my head at any given time. But yeah,
A lot of different hats that you're wearing,
a lot of
possibly literally,
hats.
metaphorically.
Well, look, I don't want to give any spoilers. I may or may not wear
Of
hats in
course.
the show. That's all I'm prepared to say.
Or what a politician's answer. You can't
I
confirm or
know.
deny.
Oh God, I know. It's rubbing off on me. I think. Although, to be honest, the politicians, the way we show them, I don't, I don't know how successful their careers would have been.
Well, you mentioned Harry Hill a little bit earlier. So Harry Hill and Steve Brown are the kind of comic minds behind it, behind the show, the
Yeah.
evil geniuses of comedy. So what's it like to work with them, especially on something as anarchic as this seems to be?
Well, it's been great. It's been fascinating creative process because the show existed already. It did a run for about a month last year at the Park Theatre in North London, but the script has gone through quite a lot of changes. The music as well, and they were around a lot. They were in the rehearsal room a lot, giving a lot of advice and feedback and encouragement. So yeah, it's been really great to work with two such experienced performers of their journeys and their careers. Yeah, it's been great to work with them, and their support has been wholehearted and yeah, much valued. Yeah.
Now, what about the musical side of this? Because this is billed as a rock opera with an exclamation mark as well, very
Yeah.
important. So why a musical?
Gosh. I think based on what so Harry wrote the script and Steve did I think pretty much all the music and lyrics. But based on what they've said, and also I can see this. I think the characters at that time were so big and so distinct, um, and we've sort of taken to referring to Tony and his cohorts that we meet in the show as like the crazy gang. So all these larger than life characters, and we still have that now. But I think that was really the first time in relatively recent memory that there was this whole sort of cavalcade of strong, memorable characters. And I think sometimes what a musical can do that perhaps call it a straight play can't do as well is give this sort of larger than life depiction of events. I think it gives you license to take to a further extreme, which the writers have very much, leaned into. I think, and you talk about something being operatic in scale, and I think this story really is. Like, if the rise and fall of Tony Blair was written as a fictional character, I think in the editing process you might go, well, it's maybe a bit far-fetched, like a bit hard to believe. And I think having the music lending an extra layer of drama, but also like the music can sort of undercut these dramatic events with just a little bit of like, wow, did this stuff really happen? So I think it sort of plays into our hands as performers. It ups the theatrical ante. that little bit extra. I think.
So in terms of the actual music, do we have original songs? Is it a little bit jukebox musical? Have we got a
No,
mixture?
it's all original. Steve's written. They're really catchy, and they really sort of help whiz the story along, like the impetus that it gives the show. Yeah, it's all original. It's all original tunes. Unfortunately, for anyone wanting a bit of D-Ream, things can only get better. Gonna have to disappoint you.
I think that's all stuck in our heads for
Yeah,
various
forever.
reasons.
You don't need to hear that. Okay, it's in there anyway.
So do you have a favorite song in the show, a favorite musical number, or maybe just, a scene that you really love to play whenever it comes around?
Oh gosh. Well, the final number is fabulous. I don't want to give too much away because it is such a treat when we get to it. Not just because I'm a sweaty mess by that point, so there's a certain degree of relief, but it's very very funny. And it's been compared. People I know that have already seen the show. Book of Mormon has been a comparison. Maybe a little bit Springtime for Hitler, if for any fans of the producers. So that's a great number. And then there's also, I would say all the songs are funny, but some of the music is really, really beautiful. There's one song which is Neil Kinnock. So going back in the early Blair years, Neil Kinnock is delivering a speech to a Labour Party conference, which is really more of a rally, I suppose. And that starts off with this really beautiful kind of folk music style with some lovely like acoustic guitar, and then it goes a little bit mad. It goes a little bit lame, crazy. But yeah, I think Steve draws on styles and genres from a very wide range and pulls it all together.
It goes a little bit lame is. Wow,
I
can't wait
we
for
all
that.
we all go a little bit lame sometimes, don't we? Yeah,
We
I think
do.
you'll know the bit
We
I
do.
mean. You'll know the bit.
I'll look out for that. I'm sure we'll all be excited to look out for that. In the play itself, as I say, I'm coming to the opening night tonight, so I can't wait to get my eagle eyes out for that that bit, and the Springtime for Hitler bit as well. I was about to invoke the spectre of Mel Brooks and the producers, because it just has that. It feels like it's got a similar anarchic spirit to
yeah, for sure. I thought that in the rehearsal room, and it's been very gratifying to be mentioned in the same breath as something like the producer. But yeah, you're right, anarchic, and some of the reviews have mentioned like phrases like gloriously distasteful and things like that. But it's very very British, I think, in its sort of Mickey taking, um, you know, smashing the idols of the past. There's no sacred cows here. Like I think everyone gets um, a fair old hiding for the
Well,
of
speaking of which, you are dealing with at times some quite tough subject matter. So much like the producers, much like the Book of Mormon, it's
yeah.
a musical rock opera that does deal with the kind of the darker side of politics. There's war. How do you kind of marshal all those tones, especially bringing in comedy, music, while also getting a little bit of that darkness across as well? Is that a fine line to walk?
I think it is a fine line to walk, and at times it's a balance. So even when there's craziness going on stage, keep your eyes on Peter Mandelson, for example, like he might be sort of puppet mastering away, think about what's what's happening in the background, what's the undercurrent of these events, what consequences are there going to be, and that's the kind of thing that we address at the end of the show. But then obviously, when we're dealing with the Iraq War and the decisions that Bush and Blair made, we're not constantly milking the laughter out of that. That it does have to stop the periods of the second half while we go, look, sorry, this is actually what happened, and we need to give that the respect that is due. And I think we do that. And it's also very interesting to think about sort of what came after this and what the consequences were of the Blair years. Really, was he the first sort of personality politician, certainly that we saw in this country? He was thought of as this kind of handsome, clean cut, new Labour, clean sweep kind of guy. And then I think possibly you could argue that in his following in his wake, we've had politicians who have been sort of personality, character first, policies second. So there is a real. It's interesting to look back with more hindsight. I know there have been Tony Blair musicals before. In fact, I was in one many years ago. But it's very interesting to put a bit more space between you and events and go, oh wow, I can actually, with a little bit more hindsight, you can really see quite clearly where politics has gone since the heavy days of '97.
And how do you think the show sort of treats Tony Blair, well, the character and the person? I guess you talked about him being a sort of personality politician. He's already kind of playing a role when you're that kind of higher, you're on that kind of global stage. There's you, and then there's the role that you play and the performance that you give. How does the show treat Tony as a character with that real history? Does he come across as a sort of anti-hero? Is he a villain? How does it sort of frame him?
I think anti-hero sounds nice. I think you'd still want to be mates with him on the whole. I don't think it's a particularly brutal depiction. I mean, Blair himself might not like it. I think we sort of suggest that he was very sort of easy breezy in the early days, very relaxed. We touch on his kind of hippie musician student days, and then he sort of, without really meaning to, sort of accidentally trips up into politics. Did he jump or was he pushed? To what extent was he led and kind of groomed for his role by others? And how much of it was down to him is something that we look at. But then he certainly gets more and more independent, I think, is how we show it. But then I think, he does end up questioning his actions and his motives. So I don't think it's a complete hatchet job by any means. I know when we were doing the show before we hit the road and went on tour, we did the show at Leicester Square Theatre in London for about 5 weeks, and we had quite a lot of Labour Party workers actually that came to see the show. I remember one night there was probably about 15 of them in the front row, all wearing their like Vote Labour badges, and they absolutely loved it, and they they tweeted very positively about it in the days afterwards. So I think it would be easy to think that we're just poking fun at him, but I don't think we are. I think we're laughing with him and all of the other characters. There is a definite fondness. I think if it was written from a place, if it was written and performed from a place of sort of anti-Blair animosity, it could become quite sort of venomous and not very fun at all. I think if you're going to send something up, I think it helps to have a real a fondness for the time and for all the people that we're talking about. So I think love him or loathe him, I think there's something to enjoy it. Yeah.
So it really is, in terms of framing the show, it's for all sort of audiences to come to it. Doesn't matter where you are on the sort of political spectrum.
I would say so, and I don't think it matters. It certainly doesn't matter whether you've lived through the earlier years. You know, we've all had, you know, I think all of the cast and crew have had friends and family that have come to see the show that maybe weren't born until, you know, the mid '90s, say. Lucky swines. So aren't necessarily familiar with Neil Kinnock, John Smith, you know, these kind of characters, but or friends maybe that grew up abroad who come to see the show, and we've been reassured that it doesn't matter, because it's still just sort of like, wow, who are these crazy large than life characters? I've not heard of them before, but now I have. So you know, it's a useful primer for anyone for anyone looking back over politics of the 90s as well.
Yeah. So it's not a history lesson, but it will maybe inspire you to maybe look into it. If you've lived through it, it will give you a different perspective on it. If you haven't, then you'll get to learn some things and have a good old entertaining night as well.
Yeah, exactly. Or it might spark off thoughts, it might spark off memories. I do think from when we opened the show, we could sort of hear people recalling the characters and the events in amongst the laughter, that you can sense a sort of, oh God, yeah, I'd forgotten about so and so. I'd forgotten it's happened. But yeah, whether you know those events, whether you remember them, or whether you're discovering for the first time, I would say that you'll have a lovely old time nonetheless.
Oh yeah, and I'd be interested to see how, you know, given you know, the sort of the political culture in Cardiff, I'd be interested to see how the Cardiff audiences take the show. You've got some Cardiff connections yourself. So have you ever performed in Cardiff before?
Yeah, I mean, I'm currently out because he married a very lovely Welsh girl, so I have a Welsh niece and nephew who really shamed me for my lack of Welsh. I remember when they were very, very little. Yes, and they get a book out, and I'm like, Uncle Will can't read that one. So yeah, they've lived in Cardiff for, oh gosh, they came back probably about 12 years ago, I guess. Been quite a long time. I've performed at the New Theatre, on several occasions. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to being back. I'm really glad.
Well, we're so excited to have you back in Cardiff, Will, and thank you so much for giving us this primer into the Tony Blair Rock Opera.
You're very welcome.
Looking forward to rocking out, and we'll see you in the New Theatre.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you very much.